Hey guys, welcome back on the channel. Today's video is going to explore Shadow. This is a leading DEX on the Sonic blockchain. They bring a couple of new very interesting features to build upon models such as, for example, Aerodrome. In case you never heard about Aerodrome, they are the leading DEX on base chain. They are actually currently the #1 protocol with a TVL of very close to $1 billion. Now, Shadow builds upon models such as Aerodrome by introducing more flexibility, so no longer there will be lock periods for users who want to make the most out of the platform. And for that, they introduced a couple new mechanics, and those mechanics all go around its native token Shadow. So Aerodrome's model also is all about its native token, holding the token, even locking it, but here on Shadow things are made a bit different. It's more flexible, there's no mandatory locking periods, and even if you decide to convert your Shadow to xShadow and stake it, you can even have access to some of that liquidity in the shape of X33, which can be minted by using xShadow. So essentially it is xShadow's liquid staked token. So you can see that everything goes around Shadow. In this video, we are going to go in full detail about it so that you can understand how to make the most out of the protocol. If we look at the protocol rankings here on Sonic, you'll see that Shadow is the 6th ranked protocol, TVL of over $86 million. They're not the leading DEX, there's Beats with over $200 million, but this is a very important point I want to make. Beats has been around since Sonic was Phantom, and they back then were also branded Beethoven DEX, okay? So there's a lot of trust from the community. Shadow, it's a much newer protocol, and with that also comes some level of risk. And by the way guys, if you want to know more about DeFi strategies, DeFi overall, I would highly recommend you to check out the links under in the description for the Underdog Investor Group. That is a paid community, but in there you'll get in touch with like-minded individuals and also very knowledgeable people in DeFi that can guide you through a lot of information that will help you level up your DeFi game. If you use my referral link down in the description, it will get you 20% off on your first month. Now that being said, let's dive in, start exploring Shadow and see how these mechanics are trying to be the new meta, the new evolution for the decentralized exchanges playing field. So for example, if you go here on the liquidity tab, we'll get access to all the liquidity pools deployed on Sonic, alright? And you'll see here just insane APRs. Let's order this by APR. So there's crazy stuff in the thousands of % order. These are more degen plays, of course. But then you see pairs, very solid pairs like S Sonic paired with USDC.E with over 3000%. But the breakdown of the APRs here, you'll see that it's mainly made from xShadow, and then there's a very small percentage of Shadow. So that's why the APR is so high. It's being heavily incentivized for xShadow stakers. But also do note that there's the Gotch tab here, which is highlighted. If we turn it off, and if you go, for example, for Gotchless liquidity pools, the APRs will tone down. So never mind all of these top APRs. I mean, we're talking about probably meme coins. So let's instead go with something which has higher TVL. For example, S paired with Shadow, 421% APR. This is an APR that you could expect if you're not involving yourself deeper within the Shadow ecosystem. And in order for you to do that, you'll need to, one, have some Shadow tokens. Right now the market price of one Shadow token is at around $70. And two, you need to convert Shadow into xShadow. You can do that at any time. The process is instant and the ratio is 1:1. Of course, it's important to know that if you're doing that, you're committing in the long run to support the protocol. Although you can instant exit at any point in time, you can go out of this, but you will potentially incur in a penalty that can go all the way up to 50%. So essentially, the people who stay committed to the protocol in the long run, they will be the ones benefiting the most. Because if you want to reverse this conversion, you can incur in a penalty that can go up to 50%. Later on, we'll go in more depth about it. Let's jump on CoinGecko to see how it has been performing. So not long ago, it was even over $200. And the price has been sort of stabilizing for the past week in between $50 to $100. So what is Shadow? This is the native token of the Shadow exchange, and Shadow can freely be converted to xShadow to earn 100% of protocol's fees, vote incentives, and rebases from Shadow exchange. So in other words, if you are already familiar with Aerodrome on the base chain, Shadow is sort of an evolution from it. And if we go here on the Shadow tab, xShadow tab actually, so this allows you to convert Shadow to xShadow. You can convert it at any time. It's instant and the ratio is 1:1. Now, why should you do that? If we jump here to Shadow's docs, you'll see how everything works in this diagram. So you convert Shadow to xShadow, that will give you already access to 100% of the protocol's fees and vote incentives. So protocols that want to strengthen their liquidity, they will send incentives, and those incentives will be directed to xShadow holders. You can then go ahead and proceed to stake xShadow in order to, on top of this, the protocol's fees and vote incentives, earn rebases from exits, and that is nothing other than people who are holding xShadow, so they did convert Shadow to it and now they wanna do the opposite and get Shadow back, because Shadow is liquid. You can sell it on the market. xShadow, it's not liquid. But the thing is, whenever you do that, you can do it instantly whenever you want, but whenever you do that, you lose 50% of your value. So if you started with 100 Shadow, you convert it into xShadow. If you exit right away, you'll only redeem 50 Shadow tokens. Alternatively, you can wait for the vesting period to come to an end. We'll touch upon that in a second, but also when you are an xShadow holder, you are able to vote, and when you do that, you will be able to direct rewards to your favorite liquidity pools. So if you have a big allocation of tokens in a specific pool, it's of your interest to direct rewards to that, making sure that that pool keeps performing and bringing you nice juicy fees. So you're basically doing a bet when you're converting Shadow to xShadow. You're betting in the long-term performance of the protocol. If this goes well, of course, Shadow can perform really well and just build up to be a protocol with the relevance that airdrop has on Base or Velodrome has on Optimism. Shadow DEX itself, they build upon those mechanics and bring some more new concepts. They are sort of the evolution, like I said. Now with this visual aid, we can basically see how previous DEX limitations evolved to this current system that Shadow has put into play. So it all starts with Uniswap. That's the beginning of DeFi with DEX's liquidity pools. It is a system that is in place until this day, but it leaves token holders out of the equation. And by token holders, I mean people who are holding the native token of the DEX. So it's pretty much a system where you can see traders and liquidity providers to interact directly, but that doesn't impact all that much token holders, right? Now the next evolution is the V33 theory. This was designed by Andre Cronje, and that is the current meta of DEXs. You can see the success that Airdrop, like I mentioned before, has on Base, among others, are basically using this system. The way that this evolves from the initial system from Uniswap is that now token holders are playing a role in this trilemma. DEXs involve traders, token holders, and liquidity providers. And if you are a token holder, you can lock your tokens. That will grant you 100% of the fees being generated by traders. So whenever people trade token on the DEX, they generate fees, they go out to pay token holders. Token holders then determine to which liquidity pools are emissions of said token, the native token of the DEX, going to be directed to. And now Shadow comes up with an innovation to this, evolving to a system where there's actually no need to lock tokens. And they decided to do that because while Andre Cronje's V33 model theoretically solved the Uniswap issue by balancing incentives between all participants, long lockups created a high friction system that forced users to lock tokens to participate equitably in the incentive model. Uniswap focused on a simple two-party system, traders and liquidity providers. V33 improved this by properly aligning incentives with token holders as well, but access to those incentives was unfair and heavily skewed towards protocols. And now Shadow aims to level up the playing ground, so to say, introducing a mechanism that allows users to exit at any time. They also decide to promote strong incentives versus lockup periods. So that was one of the key features of the V33 model. If you want to participate, you would need to have your tokens locked up, right? Now essentially that's what xShadow is and how you can profit from holding it and staking it into the Shadow protocol. Now when it comes to vested exit, if you want to avoid that 50% penalty, you can redeem xShadow over a vesting period. There's a minimum vest of 15 days and a maximum vest of 6 months. The vesting period will determine the ratio in which you'll get to redeem your xShadow. So the longer you vest it, the better. After 6 months, 180 days, you'll get a 1-to-1 ratio. So everything that you put into xShadow, you'll get it back. Otherwise, you will have a penalty. It starts at 15 days, for example. This is the maximum penalty. You will get only 50% of the tokens that you have converted. And as time goes by, this penalty starts to decrease. And with this visual aid, you will understand it better. At day 14, this is the last day to cancel vesting. After this, vesting becomes permanent and exits are only possible with a penalty, unless fully vested, which happens at day 180, 6 months. You see, maximum vesting period complete, all underlying Shadow tokens can be claimed 1-to-1, no penalty. If you go anything in between, you see as we approach the 180-day mark, your penalty will decrease, and this is how vesting plays a role and how it can impact the number of tokens that you will redeem. So what happens to those 50% token penalty for people who want to exit instantly and redeem their Shadow tokens? So that's where the PvP, player versus player rebase, comes into play. 100% of the xShadow tokens that are forfeited prior to full vesting or by instant exiting xShadow is then streamed to xShadow stakers and can be claimed in proportion to their positions after epoch flip. Epochs here on Shadow, they are just a week. So if you are an xShadow staker, you get also a piece of those tokens that other players forfeit, because this is something designed to serve as dilution protection and additional incentive. This rebase mechanism not only discourages premature exits, but also ensures that the remaining participants are rewarded for loyalty and active participation. So essentially, it's what we touched upon. It's a system which is designed for people who want to bet long-term in the overall performance of Shadow, while stakers who remain in xShadow longer earn more fees, vote incentives, user and emission exits. Since users can exit their position at any time, rewards will flow to the ones who value it the most. That is how Shadow has designed the whole system. Exit penalties create a survival of the fittest scenario where less committed capital exits and active stakers earn increased rewards, attracting more users. Now, once you convert Shadow to xShadow, you can also then proceed in order to stake it, and that will give you further benefits. You see, you need to stake your xShadow to earn 100% of protocol fees, vote incentives, and also penalties from user exits. And now we can see here also the liquid staking X33. So let's see more about this. X33 is the liquid staked version of xShadow and can be minted with xShadow. The ratio between X33 and xShadow starts at 1-to-1 and increases in X33's favor as rewards accrue from fees, vote incentives, and rebases. So as time goes by, as fees, vote incentives, and rebases build up, you'll see that the value for X33 will become higher than xShadow. X33 represents both the underlying token xShadow plus the accrued yield over time. So X33 allows users to access liquidity that would be otherwise locked in the shape of xShadow, because xShadow is illiquid. But since xShadow is illiquid, if it wasn't for X33, you would need to forfeit your xShadow position in order to redeem Shadow tokens, right? But with the X33 option, you don't really have the need for that. Important to note also that while X33 offers instant liquidity, it doesn't circumvent xShadow's exit penalties. X33 gives you full liquidity access, allowing you to trade on open market unlike staked xShadow positions. You can use X33 to mint more Shadow, and that will just upgrade your position to earn more protocol fees, vote incentives, and also penalties from exits. So you're essentially strengthening your holdings of xShadow if you use it that way. But you can also turn your xShadow into liquid tokens by redeeming X33. And when you do that, you have access to full liquidity. You can trade freely on open markets, unlike staked xShadow positions. So this is a way to go around the potential need that you might have for liquidity straight away without going into those penalties that can be up to 50% by exiting your position immediately. So these are the essential mechanics for the Shadow DEX in order for you to make the most out of it. When it comes to the liquidity pools here, they already have plenty established, over 3,800 liquidity pools, and the current rewards for this epoch are over $2 million. So this protocol is already showing some real revenue for users. Now, also very important, if you want to take part in the farming the airdrop for Sonic later this year, you can turn up the tab here for airdrop and you'll see that it will only show you pools that have this Sonic icon. So there's going to be different activity points for different pools. You see this one is 9, this one is 11, this one is 7. It will depend. So if you're wanting to farm airdrop points, you probably want to look into the specific pools that give you the highest activity points. Then we can also filter all the pools by gauge, so the ones that are getting epoch rewards, gaugeless, you see no epoch rewards in these ones, concentrated liquidity just, or legacy, which is essentially what Uniswap v2 popularized. So these are not concentrated liquidity positions, it will earn you lower fees, but also potentially they are less management intensive, so you don't have to define ranges, nothing of that. It's more of a set it and forget it type of liquidity pools. So guys, this is the breakdown for Shadow DEX, all the mechanics behind Shadow, xShadow, X33. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you want a more beginner-friendly tutorial and overview of the protocol, going you step by step how to swap, do all of these basic things with Shadow, I can also do that. Let me know in the comments if you want. So I hope you took value from the video, it helped you out in some way. If it did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more of this type of content. I'm going to wrap this one up. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.